Coming up next is a Fireside chat session on breaking the stereotype around IVF. I would like to invite Kanupriya Agarwal, first test tube baby of India, with Prathiba Raju, Assistant Editor, Digital Content, ETHealthworld, for the chat session. Welcome, Ms. Agarwal and Prathiba.
Every parent believes the birth of a child is a miracle. But that really was the case for Ms. Kanupriya Agarwal, who was the first baby successfully born via in vitro fertilization, IVF in India, a historic event that happened 40 years ago. Ms. Kanupriya Agarwal, also known as Durga, India's first baby conceived outside of the human body, has joined us today in the second edition of ETHealthworld Fertility Conclave. Thanks a lot, Ms. Kanupriya, for joining in. How do you feel to be a part of the scientific breakthrough on your birth itself? Though it's been 40 years now, many would have questioned you on this. If you can just share initially, we can start with that.
So thank you for having me on the forum. And honestly, when I get a question like this, which is, how it feels, I have been living with this for some time, and it is a little humorous for me maybe, but I've only been given love and respect due to, if I can call it, a position or a happy circumstance. Of course, my parents had to go through a lot, and it wasn't, it was a lot of medical news for them for sure, and a leap of faith as well. At that time, when you hear of something new, you don't really, and remember, this is, 70s in India, not really, technology and Google age that we have today. Internet was not there, etc. So they did, of course. For me, life has been extremely normal, a little pampered, being the only child, more pampered by my grandparents and my extended family than my parents themselves. Of course, my father pampers me much more than my mom. My mom has always grounded me. So I feel privileged and honored to have been given, and honestly very, very grateful to be having a good mix that I have been given. I could have easily, turned out very different, given the attention and given the circumstances of my birth. But my parents made sure that I was grounded enough and not, head in the clouds kind of thing. Other than that, I've honestly had a very normal life, not too many exciting moments. But whenever I'm invited to one of these forums or I meet so many doctors, it's a huge learning opportunity for me. As well as I feel grateful that there are people willing to listen, and somewhere that my life being normal is actually a good thing. So that's kind of a relief, I think, for a lot of people. Whereas, normal lives could be boring, but for me, the fact that my life is normal comes as a huge relief to a lot of couples out there. So I'm happy to live a normal life then.
You had hinted that it was not that easy for your parents because it was just 40 years ago. So can you just tell us what they had to go through then, because it was very new and it was like a beginning of a very big medical, technology or boom or whatever we should say as it is now. So if you can just touch upon that and tell me how.
So I think we must keep this in perspective of the times that it was. The world has changed immensely. People say it's changed in the last couple of years because of the pandemic. Greatly so, yes. But remember, this is 40 years ago and there was no internet. There was no Google, for sure. There was no internet. Foreign media wasn't there. We did not have cable TV. It is an era which had, a generation which had just grown out of independence. So they were the people who were really toddlers when independence was got. And now they were young people trying to make their lives better and freer. And that was the time when we did not have not just communication and entertainment, but also facilities which were very Western. We did not. It was still pre-economic liberalization India. So even the products which were available in the market weren't so many and so much. And hence the communication or the information overload in that generation isn't very high. If you paint that picture, you'll realize that what my parents did at that time, they didn't know. They knew it was new, but they had no idea how new it was. Today, if anything, my own pregnancy, I'm a Google mom. Whatever I had to keep Googling it. I had to find out. I looked through, I found out from my peers, people who had gone through it or people who were going through it, etc. That net did not exist for something new. The only places which ladies at that time could go to were their own bhabis and sisters and sister-in-laws and mothers and people like that, right? And none of them had gone through this. So in a way, I feel, and this is my personal opinion actually, it was okay to take that risk. It was risky, but it wasn't as if, a lot of information was coming her way to say, oh, these are the 500 risks or top 5 reasons of why you shouldn't do this, etc., etc. So in a way, it was good. She could put her faith. They knew the risks. So the fact that they were so keen to have a child, even then they knew, and the doctor was very, very open with them. And they told me from day one that the doctor said, maybe nothing will happen. Maybe a child happens who is, deformed in any way. We don't know. I've never done this before. So it wasn't as if, he was telling them, showing them dreams. It wasn't like that at all. So they knew that they could either get a deformed baby mentally or physically, or no baby at all, or a baby which came, but something's happened later. So developmental issues. And remember, that time sonographies weren't as great as they are today. So a lot of things which you can find out, they couldn't find out at that time. And even then, this thing about, how much sonography to do is also something which was a burden. So I think they went on faith, and think of anything that you go on faith on, and that's what they were doing. They put their faith in the doctor, and she did not have a social structure to support her. I think, actually prevent her. That's I think the bigger great thing that happened, that nobody was around to, point fingers and say, oh, they have to medically do something. The fact that she didn't have a child, she wasn't put under social trauma or anything. And that's purely because she's a very, very strong woman. And I don't think a lot of families and women are like that. Many women have to go through a lot just to prove their womanness. And if they can't get a child, then it's really looked down upon. She came from a very strong family, and where the women are really respected and made independent thinkers, even if they weren't given the liberty to do education and go out there in the world and do commercial businesses. But they were strong women, and hence she wasn't ever put under pressure that she didn't have a child. She, I think, felt it herself, seeing everybody else having a child. So there was some psychological pressure out there, but nobody really said anything to her or made her feel different because she didn't have a child. So I think that helped. The fact that mentally she wasn't put under pressure. Socially, she could still lean on her family during her pregnancy, though nobody understood if she needed anything special. So everybody treated her the normal way. And economically, she didn't really have to do a lot, in terms of, obviously, there wasn't too much of economic burden on the treatment at that time. It was all experimental. But there was a cooperation and all of that between the doctor and the family. And there wasn't an economic burden either on her to either do the house task or to do something else which could have, risked her pregnancy or any other thing. So I think these 3 factors made it conducive for them. But I think mentally they were prepared, till the baby was born. And even, so I'm a girl, and girls have these biological milestones. So while they never showed it to me, the happiness that came with every milestone was evident. That, look, she was worried whether this will happen or not. So whether it was my menstrual cycle, or whether it was my own child, or whether my marriage. So coming from a very conservative family, they were obviously worried at the back of their head. But I think kudos to them. They never let that worry transfer to me at any stage. So once I hit 13, my menstrual cycle came, and she was like, oh, yay, it's happened and all of that. And I was like, you were worried about it? Really? And then we just had a small laugh about it. But I think the pressure that they were able to put through themselves requires that kind of social, psychological, and economical factors, I think. looking back now, without these three things, even if one is slipping somewhere, it will put a burden and the outcome of pregnancies and how you're going to be able to raise that child.
Yeah, you have actually covered a bit of like how was your childhood and how did you grow up. But the coinage which was like which maybe it's still there. India's first test tube baby. How do you see that?
Um, it's a bittersweet feeling for me. It's sweet because I get a lot of love and respect, like I said, and opportunities. I think who gets to celebrate their birthdays and meet the governor of a state and on a big platform like that. On the other hand, I can never hide my age on the funny side. But on a bitter side, it feels a little strange that I am being celebrated and I'm having a good life, whereas the scientist who actually did so much, um, I don't know how to say it. It's a little beyond tragic. It's not really tragic, honestly. It's just unfair. It's just downright unfair that it's become just because there was no patent at that time, and it's not just about commercial benefits. It's purely about having given your life to something which is working so well for so many people, and it's touched so many people's lives. A lot of lives. If you ask me, many people go through their entire life trying to find a purpose and make a difference in the world, which will survive them. We all know we are going to die one day, but what's going to happen beyond that? Will my name be remembered? Will my work be remembered? Will I still be effective? And here's a guy who did all of that. Here's a guy who took all those risks. Here's a guy who is Indian to the core. He was given opportunities just after to go to various countries, and he didn't. And he just believed that he could be the torchbearer of research in India, and why doctors couldn't be researchers or help people out. And I think it's a shame that a lot of his work has been treated the way it has been, and the fact that we are very hesitant in giving respect to people who really actually deserve it. So what if I haven't made something big? I should at least be able to do that. And I find that and honestly, in my naive world till I was 24, 25, I didn't know that politics was everywhere. Being in this world, it has just, kind of, that's the sad part, I think, honestly. So that's really the bitter part, and which is why I say it's bittersweet. Every time I think about that, it feels like a sham that I'm an actress, that I'm going out there and people are saying, oh, you're the first test tube baby. I'm like, but yeah, do you know the guy who made this? Are they in the textbooks? Is your next generation going to say that? Do you even acknowledge the guy and his techniques in your clinic? I have to hold myself back sometimes, so not to sound too bitter, but it's not fair. It's just not fair.
How do you see the growth of the IVF space as of now? We have some 6 million babies worldwide have been born through IVF. And if you can touch upon that, and do you think there are still myths surrounding the IVF industry?
So I think from in the last 40 years, IVF not just IVF, but technology in medicine has grown by leaps and bounds, and is still doing that. And IVF is no less. The fact that there are so many children born out of IVF just points to the fact that it is a socio-cultural need, which both men and women have. It's now a choice, that a woman doesn't have to worry about her age cycle or her, and it's opened many, many doors, many, many such social boundaries that, let's say, women had earlier, and I not just childlessness, but timing of children and what have you. So I think that's one large part of it. The second large part is that where coming from a layman or a patient, let's say, psyche, we always only find out about the advancements of a particular piece or about that once we go through it. So if I haven't been touched by cancer, I will not know. It's the same thing, till I make up my mind to do something about it, and I wouldn't have known. And then coming into the picture and saying, okay, hey, I've hit 35, I want a child now, and I've realized I can't have it. Now let me get it. It's not going to happen so fast. So you have to give it some time. One. Two, you're never going to find out as much as a doctor who's done their research and has been helping patients. So I think we as a Google generation should understand that we're not going to be doctors, and the fact that a lot of it is not experimentative, but a lot of it still depends on the same three factors that I said. It's not treatment, like most doctors will tell you, will depend upon your social support system, your mental health, and everything else. So I think IVF is no different than that. But the expectations on IVF, because there's so much of emotion attached to it, is much higher. That the success rates needs to be that much. Having said that, faith is important as well. Having said that, it's still much better than what it was earlier, and it's getting better every day. The flip side, however, is that you've got to do your own homework. I mean, there is no denying that because it is growing so much, there is so much of money in anything medical, that constantly there will be people out there who are, like the khota sikka or the spoiled coin in the basket. And that's with anything. So I don't think it's only with IVF, it's with anything. So you have to do your homework. You have to figure out what are your ways to get there. There are myths. I'm still surprised by it. I didn't know there were. Honestly, every time I attend one of these things, I'm told there are myths still. And when I then meet a few people and they say that, I meet a few doctors, and I can't tell you how much of love I get from the entire doctor community. And when I asked a couple, I said, what's the big deal? Why are you all so gung-ho about meeting the first test tube baby? I'm like a person, like a normal person. And the first thing they say is because, we gave X number of couples children, but they don't want to recognize us in public. I find that very strange, honestly, that, if you go meet your cardiac surgeon who helped your life, wouldn't you want to say hello to that person? Wouldn't you want to thank that person every time you met that person? Why should it be different for a gynecologist to give you your child? Willing to go through so much of medical procedures, to get a child. And now that you have a child, what's the big deal? And also I think we are in a generation, or in the times right now. How can we say that you're a less woman or a man if you don't have a child? If you can be born with, maybe one eye less, or you can, get some accident happens, something happens, and you lose, or some disease happens, and, you need to get, operated, or some part of your finger falls off, and we don't feel any less of ourselves. So if you are born in a way, or something develops and you have to have some help to get a child, why is that a problem? I'm wearing specs. Am I a less of a person because I can't see well? So I think, people should just step out a little bit. We are enough, out there in the open right now. We have enough access to information, data, people, circles, and I think it's about time that, sex is out in the open. So it's about time that we stop thinking that, if you see a person who's got a child, kaise mila wo bacha? That's one. The second big myth that I want to tell people, and this is across between both IVF children and people who are adopted as well, tell the kids as soon as you can. I mean, if I would have found out later on when I had buddhi, if I would have found out when I had, I was 5 years old or 6 years old or something like that, I would have formed opinion. And please remember, kids at, between an age till they are teenagers, they're still molding themselves, they're still finding themselves. And if something is thrown at them at that time, which kind of upsets that balance, obviously it's going to affect them. But if you grow up with it, now it's never going to affect them because it's part and parcel of what they are. Similarly, saying that I'm a test tube baby is definitely not weird. And it shouldn't be. Why should it be weird? So I think the earlier kids know, and they grow up with that knowledge. They think remember, they don't know about how babies are created at that age. Like I keep saying famously that by the time biology happened, that's when the penny dropped for me. Till then, I was told you're a test tube baby. And, sometimes during my birthday, I used to be, put in my nanny's house or somewhere else. And my friends were told, reporters shouldn't meet her in school. And my we had a laugh about that. But my teachers were told, and I used to wonder what's the hoo-ha about, and none of us figured it out till we hit biology class. And so you realize that that's how kids are, that's how growth is. So even if it's a cultural social problem for yourself, it's not a cultural problem for your child. So, and don't make it a cultural social problem for your child by hiding it, because the more you hide it, the more kids want to know. And then it'll seem weird when suddenly on her 13th birthday, on his 16th birthday, something comes out. So I think these two things, that, get into it with full knowledge, yes, but have some faith. Know that this is a developing process. We are not there yet. We are not yet 100% there. But it's much better now.
Do you have any anecdotes that you want to share from your journey, like from the 1980s versus now, in the context of acceptance of IVF process?
Sure. So I think even though we say that medically the success rates are good and all of that, we must understand that getting a child is a very emotional issue. And culturally, even in India, pregnancies are not really announced till they are, after the third or the fourth month. And that's because of the belief that what if it drops or something like that. And it's an emotional turmoil state for the parents, maybe the mom more than the dad, but yeah, for the parents, and of having lost a child. And you don't want the whole world then, coming into that. And hence, I believe that, parents in India, when they go into IVF procedures, knowing the success rate, they don't want the world to know that, look, they don't want to announce that, look, we're trying to have a baby. Because everybody and their cousin will then, short of writing social media messages, will start telling them advice, and will start, wanting to tell them what to do. And, oh my God, again, it was unsuccessful, etc., etc. So I think that pressure didn't happen for my parents, and neither for me. But that's something which we've got to deal with. And I think, if we can leave them alone for some time to just deal with it, that will be good. The second thing that I think parents and not parents, wanting to be parents need to know is that just like any big thing that we do need our social circle. We are not, by nature, humans are not individualistic. So even if you don't tell the whole world, please tell a couple of people. I've had my best friend go through IVF and not tell me. So it's still there. And I understand that, because she's like, every conversation we would then have would be about that. I didn't want it. Only after she delivered, then she told me, you know what you and my baby have in common? And I said, what? I said, well, you all are both IVF. And I think that speaks volumes. Okay. And this is my best friend. She's my generation. So I think that will be there. I think just be there around for your friends, and you'll notice that they need something. We knew that they were going through something, but we didn't want to intervene till she told us. And only once the child happened did they realize that they needed to tell us, kind of thing. I respect that, and I think we should be like that as well. Also, I've had certain cases where there are certain, aunts and uncles who will always be like, oh, she's IVF, will she be able to have her own child? Who's going to marry her? Kind of talk. And my mom, I think, was strong enough to push those out of and keep those away. So if you want to keep something away from your children, I think that's a smart thing to do, to keep away these nosy, no good relatives or friends. And we all know who they are in our circles, who we need to keep around, but don't need them to do this. My parents had a very good relationship with Dr. Mukherjee and Mrs. Mukherjee till before they both died. So I think it's important. It's nice to be around them. They explained the science to me. Even Dr. Suneet Mukherjee, who's no longer there, my parents couldn't explain the science to me. I was curious to know the science. So it's nice to have, to be in touch with the doctors and people around who can explain the science for a curious child. So I think these were the only anecdotes which I can, tell you, like I said.
Still that hesitancy among the couples who are like, who don't want to recognize even the doctors who had helped them in the process. So you think people still find IVF as an unnatural process, or how you want to educate the audience on the normalcy of the process? as you yourself have a kid who is healthy and born through a normal pregnancy, but you were a test tube baby. So if you can just tell us about it, like why the couples who are like looking into IVF should not think that it is an unnatural process.
So, some people, yes, I did meet a few people now that you remind me, who believe that, it's something which is God gifted, and, we shouldn't mess with God's work, etc. But it is actually a biological process, just like, would you not get your heart repaired if there was a hole in it? If the answer is yes, it's the same thing. God didn't intend that hole to be there, did he? Or maybe he did, then why repair it? So, why couples can't have children is a biological process. Just like, if I have high blood pressure, now there are medicines as well as procedures to help me out with it. It's no longer looked at as, the body is a temple. That's right. We shouldn't, misuse it. But can we help it along a little bit because of many issues? One could be that, yes, just, help it along its way to do better because of today's issues, because physiologically there's a problem either with you or your partner for not having a child. It doesn't mean that psychologically or socially you're not adept. Parenthood, and I've realized this maturity only once I've had a child of my own. For a long time, I couldn't believe why my parents wanted a child, because there was a long time in my career and in my life when I didn't want a child. I was quite happy with the way I was, free in my own world. I'm like, why do I even want a child? And I really wondered at that time that, what made my mom want a child? It seemed so alien to me. But, now that I have my child, it is not just a physical need. It is a mental need. It is a fulfillment that a woman gets about not fulfilling herself as a woman, but as a person. There are people who don't want. I have enough number of friends who don't want children, which is fine. But for people who want a child and physically there is a problem, this is just that aid. It's like saying, I like watching movies, but I don't want to wear my specs. I find that strange, right? I mean, it is, and also the process which is there in IVF is assisted reproduction. It is not reproduction. So you can't do away without, the human component of it, which is the eggs and the sperms. It's still not there. I don't know, 100 years from now or 20 years from now, considering advancement. But today, that human component is still human. You're just assisting it on its way, not taking place of something else. And that miracle that happens of the cells dividing and all that, that's not assisted. It happens on its own, how life develops. And hence, what develops, it depends upon your genes. And ART children or IVF children, that they are robots. Each one's going to be like the other one. They are going to be your children, just like they would have been, in a normal. And everybody knows how normal children happen, right? I mean, we are all adults here, and we know how sex happens, and it's an act, right? And similarly, this is an act. It just happens to be in a petri dish and not inside the womb of the mother. It doesn't make it any less real or less surprising.
What message of hope do you want to convey to the women who are currently facing any problems with this pregnancy, or who are like a little hesitant to take this up? If we can.
So, so I think, I don't think, there are many layers of issues that a woman can be facing, and because of her hesitancy. The only encouragement I would do is to give science a chance, and to select a doctor who you're comfortable with, because you're going to stay with them for some time. And seek the support of a social structure. Even if you're trying to do it as a single woman and you want to have a child, please, I mean, it's completely your choice. But you will still need that social support. You will still need a person who you can, cry buckets of tears with, and you'll still need that person who you can share that joy with, whether it's your best friend or your mother or your aunt or your bhabhi or your whoever it is. So that is without saying don't do it alone. I think that's one. The second is trust your doctor, and that faith that I spoke about goes a long way, but it also works both sides. So if you have questions, please go ahead and ask. I do know for a fact that a lot of gynecologists who are doing IVF practice undergo this, they also have psychologists on board. They also have, a good setup of counselors who can, and there's no shame. I think that's the other problem that India has. And I think it's a mix of two bad problems, that, counseling is a bad thing. It's not. It's because we live our lives so differently. Earlier, remember, everybody used to stay in one big house and you used to find that aunt or that sister or somebody who you actually gelled with, even if you didn't gel with the whole family. Now we don't live in those big houses. So finding that, one or two people who you can bare your soul to is difficult. And hence it's easy sometimes to do it to a stranger. And that person is at least not a stranger to the process or to the thing that you're going through. So my big suggestion is find a gynecologist who can help you out in those 2-3 ways and who you are comfortable with. Please ask n number of questions, but have that little bit of faith that the doctor will, reach out and do the best that is possible today. Like I said, this technology is advancing by leaps and bounds in many fields, not just in getting babies, but in many, many other fields as well. I was quite impressed, I would say the word is, and even more respect for Dr. Mukherjee happened because, the various offshoots that has happened, because now you can create a child in a petri dish. The ethics of it I'm going to leave out. But I believe in advancement of science because it is making my life better.
The people who are listening to us, the audience, and especially the couples who are wanting babies, the science of baby making is what we have spoken. And I think we have given a lot of hope and the faith, as you said. Thanks for coming in and talking with us in this forum. Thank you.
My pleasure. All the best.
Thank you, Ms. Agarwal and Pratibha, for an engrossing and detailed session. Let's take a short break. Stay tuned, everyone.